Hi, Binary Viking here, and welcome to another C# tutorial. So last episode we talked a bit about types. I even still have the diagram. No, I actually don't have the diagram open anymore, so let's fast go in here. As I was talking about in the last episode, we have the different types here. We do not see the string type here, but this is the basic types we have in C#. And that is pretty much what you will be working with at the most of the times. We can also make up our own types, but I will go into details about that in the next episode I will make. In this episode I want to look a bit more into methods and return types. So in this program class we have right here, we see we have the main method. So what if we want a new method to do something special? We could for instance say we want a method to actually ask for our name and not have the ask for name up here. For instance, we can go down here and say static, and we want it to be a void because it will not return anything, and we can say ask for name, and it will not have any parameters either, so it will be like this. So what we can do here is, instead of having all this up here, we can pretty much just move it down into this method instead. So now if I compile the program, you will notice that everything down here is not shown in the program at all. If I click any key now, it will simply close. And that's because we need to call this method. We need in the main method to call onto another method. So we go and say ask for name. It does not need any parameters. So now we have ask for name, and now we will see that it will again ask for our name. That's because we here say it needs to find this method, go in here, print out, enter your name, wait for the user to write something in the console, and then lastly print out our name. So if I again here write Viking, we should see hello Viking, and if I click any key it will close. And it will close because when it reach the last code line and see that we are closing the body of the method, it will simply just return to here. So to demonstrate it, we can, for instance, make a breakpoint. We can do something like this. If I jump one step, you can see now it says hello world, and it's because this line right here have been executed now. The next line is it will call into this method like this. So we can see it actually jumped all the way from here down to here into the new method. And now it will say enter name, it will ask for the user to write the name, and so on, as we saw before. Next thing we can do is, for instance, to do something like saying we want a method to actually return the name, or we want the method that only ask for a name and then put it back or throw it back to another one. So we can for instance have here static void print name. And what I will do now is I will simply move this back up here, and I will talk about this in a bit. I'm sorry for possibly confusing here. And I will now move this string name down to ask for name. And what I will do is I will not have this anymore. I will actually change the return type to a string. If I could type correctly. There we go. So now, instead of saving this into a variable, we will say return console readline. So it will return whatever the user types in here to wherever we call the method from. So instead of having the name variable here, we will call in ask for name. And of course we need the correct parameters, or not parameters here, but you get the point. Parentheses. So instead of ask name up there, we will change it to print name. I'm sorry if that may have been a bit confusing. So we have changed ask for name to print name, as we have made a new method here. The print name only have the print or write functions, where ask for name now will return whatever the user prints or writes in the console, and it will be returned to up here, as that's where we ask for a name. If I compile it and remove the breakpoints, of course, we will see again it's asking for our name, and I can type in like this, and it will again say hello and wait for the last key press. The way this works is that you saw before that we were calling the method. So when we're calling the method here, it will jump in here, but we're also in here calling this method. So this method is called inside here and will go down here. It will then here wait for the user to type something into the console, and lastly it will return whatever the user typed in to here. And you can pretty much say up here will be where we before had the variable name, because we stored in a variable before, but instead of storing it in a variable, we will now return it from this method up to here instead. So what more can we do, you may ask? And we can, for instance, say we want our name to be changed in some way. So let's fast do this before the time is up. We will make a new method that returns a string, and we can say alter name, and this time we want actually the name to be sent as a parameter down here. So we want in here a string, and we want to call it and usually what you want is either call it underscore name, for instance, or just name with little starting letter. So make the body of the method, and we now see it have a problem, and it's because the method is not returning anything right now. So if I was to say return, and now I want to return binary, for instance, it will again be all fine, but I will do something else, you'll see. So what I want to do is say name dot, and I will say substring. And what we can do with substring is to remove some letters. Let's say I want to remove the first letter, and I want only the first 3 letters after that to be displayed. So what we can do now is to say we want to return alter name with the name we actually type into the console. So if I run the program, it will now ask for my name. So if I type Viking, you can see it's now saying Ike, because it takes the number 2 letter and 3 letters forward from that letter, and of course always close down. So the way we now are doing this is we're calling print name. Inside print name we go ask for name, we then call alter name, but before it's actually called alter name, it reads the line the user types into the console, and lastly it then jumps into here and returns the substring of that name. It then again returns alter name, so the substring we got from alter name, to up here and write it out. And yeah, if there's any question to why or how it works, feel free to post the comments. I will try to answer any question there may be about it. But just think as it as we are calling the method that is returning this method here, where we have the parameters here, where the parameter is whatever we type into the console. We can, for instance, say I want the parameter to be something static or something that is not defined by the user, for instance binary. So here we see that the parameter is sent directly up to here without having any sort of input from the user. So if I do this, you can see it say Ina, because there's no user input anymore. So there we go, it simply shut down because there's no user input. I don't know if this may or seems easier to understand this way, but just think as it as we have inside the parentheses a variable or of some sort. I could even say string name equal binary, and instead of having needing a semicolon here, and instead of binary here I could say name here, and it would be the exact same thing. So we here store it to a variable first, we then send the variable we have stored the name into down here, and it will then change the name and return it where it was first called up here to Ina. So I already used a lot of time to try to explain this. I hope you understand what I'm trying to go on or go about here. If not, feel free to post the comments. I will try to answer the questions as best as possible. And also, if you have anything you want a tutorial on, feel free to ask and I will try to get around to do one. So I noticed that there was one thing I actually forgot to mention in this episode, and that is basically that you can store a return type to a value or variable just as you would with a normal value. So here we have a string name, and we here go to ask name method, which will return whatever we write in the console. It will then be stored into the name variable right here. And this could be good on different occasions where we would use it more than once. For instance, we could imagine that we wanted to print out the name twice. So instead of having ask name here, we will save it to a variable, so we can use it all the places we want at once instead of having to call the method multiple times. It's almost always a matter of choice if you want to have it in here 2 times, but in this case we don't want it, so we ask, or we will be asked for the name once. I haven't really made anything here because I deleted the old solution, so it's really basic. So if I type Viking, we can see hello Viking, and if I click any key, we'll see it will be printed again. And S is because I clicked the S key. So there we have it. That's basically it. So thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section and I will try to answer them as best as possible. So until next time, take it easy.